Welcome to the Dr. Raj podcast with Dr. Raj Dasgupta, a show all about educating patients, students, and aspiring doctors about better patient care. Dr. Raj is a quadruple board-certified physician and associate professor at the University of Southern California. He was a co-host of the TNT series Chasing the Cure with Ann Curry, as well as a regular on the TV show The Doctors. And now, here's our show.
Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Raj podcast. And once again, this is not just a podcast about compiling all the medical knowledge you can. Don't get me wrong, I love doing that. This is a podcast about wellness, about being a good person, about helping others. And I always say this, it's a little repetitive, but what I love about having my own podcast? I get to invite my friends, and I love all my friends. So of course, today is a special combination because it's not just about one of my friends. Many people have always asked me like, hey, Dr. Raj, what's your jam? And I'll tell you that I enjoy my life divided into three compartments. And of course, the biggest one is being a doctor. And I'm always so blessed to do that. And but there are other parts. And the two other parts is teaching. And for those of you who want to hear me just rattle off some physiology or biochemistry, then that's a different podcast. It's called Beyond the Pearls. It just got released. So that's if you wanted me to talk about medicine today. But the third part of my life, which I know to talk about a lot, is media. And I am the luckiest person in the whole world. I got to be on this doctor's TV show for a bunch of seasons. I got to hang out with the legendary Ann Curry for a season. And right now I do ABC News and I get to talk about our pandemic. So people have been asking me like, hey, I kind of want to do a little media. This is kind of my jam. I'm a resident. I'm a medical student. I'm in college. And I can't seem to answer these questions correctly. So I'm actually going to talk to someone who could actually mentor you, who does this for a living, who knows the correct answers. And her name is Candace Melamed. And she is a friend of mine, but I know her because on the Dr. Raj podcast, there's another guest, which is her husband, Dr. Benjamin Emanuel, who I got to tell you, I have a little crush on him. He's like one of my best buds, man. And I'm a little jealous Candace is married to him, But anyways, let me talk about Candace and only Candace right now. So, she is the founder and CEO of Spotlight Group Agency. It is a full-service PR-driven communications agency specializing in the health and beauty industry, having represented notable medical experts, building them into a key opinion leaders. Candace quickly gained a reputation for being the quintessential pitch guru, that's in quotes, over the years. She has prided herself on conceptualizing exceptionally unique story ideas that get her clients noticed and remembered by key editors, producers, and writers. Candace is viewed as a leader in health and beauty public relations, compelling one of America's top PR experts, Howard Bragman, to refer to her as the Mick Jagger of health and beauty PR. That's kind of cool. Throughout her career, Candace has fostered an array of notable media relationships, resulting in long-term public relations successes for her clientele, which range from medical experts to indie beauty brands, as well as medical aesthetic devices and treatments. So with that being said, Candace, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me and for that intro. I was trying not to laugh hysterically at the comment about Ben.
Well, I got to tell you, ever since I got to meet you, and one of the first time I actually met you was on a cruise ship.
I know.
We would have been planning to be together with our families.
I know, of all places.
So let's start off with a little background. This is kind of like the meet and greet part of the podcast. So you are from wonderful Southern California like me. And tell me the story, the timeline of how did you get where you are today? Where did you go to college? And did you always want to be a PR guru?
No, I went to college at CSUN, but I actually didn't even know what PR was. But I'm fortunate enough that my older brother, who's 5 years older than me, was already in college when I was in high school going through the what do you want to be when you grow up phase with college counselors. And as they checklisted medicine or I don't know, all these different possibilities, asking me what classes I liked the most. What I really enjoyed was dealing with people and interacting and listening to stories and just that one-on-one, that personal human interaction is what I love the most. And I always have. And the counselors were like, try psychology and sociology and take these summer classes and see what you think. My brother, on the other hand, had just transitioned from, I think, biology or something to journalism. And he came home one day and he was like, there's this thing in the journalism department called public relations. Oh. And it suits your person. It's like perfect for you. It's exactly you. I think you'd love it. And I applied to college, applied to CSUN. That's where I went. They have an astounding journalism department. And so I was able to do my emphasis in public relations, and I did a minor in marketing at the same time. But I just totally trusted my brother, and I was like, oh, he said this fits my personality. I'm just going to go with it. And so my second year in, I started to have that panic of like, I really don't know what PR is. We haven't taken those upper division classes. I better take an internship and just figure out what this is all about. And so being in LA and, being in my very early 20s, I was like, I'm going to do an entertainment PR internship.
Cool.
I thought PR is publicist. And that to me was like celebrities publicist. And I didn't know anything else. So I did an entertainment PR internship with Warren Cowan and Associates. And Warren Cowan, who since passed, was known as the godfather of PR. I mean, he started, it's just an amazing roster of clients, and he had a number of VPs working in his office. And so I had the opportunity to work with several of them and do different tasks. And I mean, what a great time to be in entertainment PR, doing red carpet events and gifting seats. And, it's the whole Hollywood theme, but it grew old very quickly. The most important part of it, though, was that I was beyond fascinated and enthralled, not with the Hollywood angle, but with the fact that I was behind the scenes, that stories, that articles, that TV segments were happening. People were reading these things and they were watching these things, and they had no idea that here I was behind the scenes initiating that story and making it happen. And to me, that was the coolest part. Like, totally. I had no desire to have a byline. Some journalists are like, it's all about the byline for me. It's, I want my name there on the screen, or I want my name there in the byline. And I had zero desire to be in the front and center. I love that behind the scenes. I love the fact that I was making things happen. People were reading these articles. It was causing change or conversation. And no one had any idea that it was me. To me, that was really exciting. And so I quickly realized that entertainment was not for me, but PR was. And so I obviously finished my education, and I went on to do a little bit of different types of PR. I did some beauty, working with a local day spa in Los Angeles. I did some restaurant. I did some corporate work with CarMax when they launched into Southern California. And then I started my own agency, of super PR only boutique little agency. And my very first client was a relatively young doctor, pretty straight out of medical school, pretty recent out of medical school. But I was able to get him some amazing press, both locally in Los Angeles and nationally. So like the men's journals,
nice,
and, ABC News, and, you name it. And so for me, my gauge into like, am I on the right path or not, is if I ask a lot of questions. So when I ask a lot of questions, to me, I'm super interested and I want to know more. And I just like can't get enough. And I realized that when I worked with doctors, because with the entertainment agency, there was as sort of like a celebrity doctor. He worked with the Lakers and, some sports teams, and his patients were some celebrities. So he had hired Warren Callan and Associates. And so I did get a little taste of like working with the doctor too. So, and I asked a lot of questions then. And so that was my gauge. And I was just like, I love the beauty side of it. That keeps it fun. And the medical side of it was super interesting. I was really engaged with that. It gave me an opportunity to learn about so many different fields of medicine without going to med school. And obviously I don't consider myself a doctor, but I find all these areas, whether it's neurology or dentistry or dermatology, you name it, I find it fascinating, and I get an opportunity to learn a little bit. And so then I as I was starting my agency, I just decided to hone in and specialize in that health and beauty. I'm like, I just want to keep it strictly to this area. And I loved working with doctors. And so that's kind of where I've gained my reputation and my niche.
I love it. And so I got a couple of questions. So I'm gonna throw the cultural question out there. So one thing in common. So I'm married and I have a beautiful wife who's Persian. I got this awesome Persian family on my side. And I know you and your husband are Persian. So, I'm going to ask you the question, because there is a little overlap between my Indian side. When I was growing up, my dad was always kind of like, hey, always kind of, maybe you want to go the route of medicine, maybe you want to do industry, maybe you want to do these things. I love that you are an independent woman and you're like, no, I want to do PR. It's awesome. It's fun. It's your passion. How did your parents kind of think about that? Did they grab your hand and do the slap on the wrist and
not at all, actually
send you back to the counselor one more time?
No, no, not at all. I was actually really fortunate that I was always encouraged by my mom. She was like, I really don't care what you study. I don't care what you do. I just want to make sure that you do something, you get your education, and you do something where you can take care of yourself. Like you can feed yourself and you're not going to be dependent on anybody, period. And that was it. She's like, that's all I care about. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you study. Just find something you love and that you can make money from. And so
Dude, go mom.
it was, yeah. I mean, my mom, seriously, right? And I was the first girl on my mom's side of the family to get a college education. So that was pretty big. That was pretty big. And so it was nice to have that support. That was like, I just want you to find something. Don't care what it is. So that pressure wasn't there, but I always felt like I put it on myself, was, when you don't have it from an outside source sometimes, or maybe I'm just self-driven like that. I don't know.
You're probably just self-driven. You're my favorite type A in the whole world. I hope you know.
I am so type A. Yes, I will admit that all the way.
Now, let me ask you this. Like, when I'm looking at your timeline, there's some college internship. Now, it's pretty awesome that you went from, was there a first job or you just decided right away, I want to be my own CEO? How do you determine right away that that's a risk and that's an investment and that's time?
Yeah.
A little bit more. How did you know you want to be a CEO?
Well, it wasn't right out of college. So I had that first internship, and it was a pro and a con. So most internships, and when I give advice, and by the way, I love that you said the word mentor early on, because I am all about mentoring. I have an amazing one myself. So fortunate to have found one of my college professors as my mentor. And so I do believe in mentoring people. And typically what I say about internships is like, do them for a summer or do them for like a quarter or semester, move on every 3 months, because it gives you an opportunity to look at not just for example, if it's PR, it not only gives you a chance to look at different areas of PR, whether that's tech or fashion or entertainment, it also gives you a chance to look at corporate structures versus, boutique structures versus, like different environments and how people are. So you can get a sense of like where you want to land. I didn't do that. I stayed at that internship. I give that advice. I stayed at that first internship for a year and a half, actually. So it was my first internship. It was also my only internship. And it took me through the end of college. And so on the upside of that was I stayed so long that I was able to gain trust enough to actually not just write the pitches, but send the pitches, communicate with journalists.
Okay.
And I was able to see projects all the way through. So I got a sense of not just working in a PR office, but I got a sense of actually taking ownership of those media hits when they happened. And so it only led me to love PR more.
Okay.
But, so I had that internship for about a year and a half. And then when I graduated college, I was working for a boutique agency that did kind of a little bit of everything. So that restaurant, that corporate, a little bit of beauty. And then from there, that's when I took the leap, and I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot. I'll give myself 6 months. And I didn't start that thinking I'm going to be a CEO. I was like, I just, want that autonomy and I want that ownership. I've always felt like I was, not anymore. But when I first started, I always felt like I was the young one in the room. I was the youngest in the room. And it's hard to be taken seriously when you're the youngest in the room. And so in that first job I had, I felt like instead of, moving up and getting more responsibility and being able to go out and meet with clients or bring in business after being there for a period of time. And I was this company's first hire. So she was working out of her house and then moved into an office space. I was the first hire. She hired somebody who was a little older than me. And then that person was the one that would go on the business meetings. And
Ouch.
so, it was it's fine because these are the experiences that cause you to grow. And I really felt I was fortunate enough to have my parents' support in doing this. And that's really what it comes back down to at the end of the day, is having that backbone. Right. Yeah. And so, I took a leap and I was like, I'm going to give it 6 months. Worst case scenario, if I don't get a client and I can't make this happen, just go back out and apply to other jobs. It's not like, I've got much to lose. And so within that short period of time, I got, my first client. And then, that was kind of put all my energy into that to really make it the best that I can, so I can have case studies to talk about and really see if this is what I want to do. And it's tough. It's tough to be your own boss, but I'm fortunate enough that my dad, and I kind of feel like I've got entrepreneurs kind of on both sides of the family. So I kind of pulled in that energy and that support. So my dad is also, he's an engineer, but he has his own machine shop. He's his own boss, and I'm totally a workaholic like him.
Well, hey, let me switch gears a little bit, because, I was thinking about naming this segment, "How to Step into the Spotlight."
Love it.
Promoting your company a little bit.
Yes.
Now that we did the beginning and we know that you know your stuff. So the questions, and they have I'm going to have some questions that my med students and residents have been asking me, and some questions of people who just want to get into PR, but let's get some definitions down, because I'm always confused. So I'm going to bang out some questions. You're going to answer these.
Okay.
So,
all right.
What is PR? And people always say, dude, I need some PR if I'm going into that, but do they really need it, Candace? And can you explain this to us?
So that's really interesting, because I hear that all the time. I need some PR. I need some PR, especially from doctors. Like, I need to get some PR. But then the question really is, what is it that you want? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What's the objective? So whenever I hear anyone say, I want some PR, my first question is, what's your objective? Let's start there.
Okay.
Because typically the first thing I hear is, I really want to grow my practice. I want to, get some more patients. And then the response is, that's not what PR does. So let's look over to maybe marketing. So PR is like this loose term that I feel like people kind of throw around without really understanding what it is, what it's designed to do, and how to utilize it or how to leverage it. So PR, which stands for public relations, obviously, is when you are pitching, you're giving ideas or story suggestions to writers, to editors, and to producers. So it depends if, you're looking to get into online stories or print stories or television. You're giving them the idea. You're saying, I've got this expert who can talk about X, Y, and Z, right? Just like how you were saying, I was on ABC News talking about the pandemic.
Yeah.
Let's say there's a publicist pitching you to the producer at ABC News. Hey, I've got this Dr. Raj. He's an expert because of these things, and he can talk about how the pandemic, what your viewers need to know.
Okay.
That puts it in the producer's court to put a segment together. And so that you may be one expert, you may be one of three experts they talk to. They may decide, this isn't really something we want to cover right now. So then your publicist is going back and forth. Oh, he can talk about this. He can talk about that. These are all these different ideas. When you're interviewed, you don't know what those questions are in advance. You have no control over the question. That show is going to edit that segment however they want. You may talk to that reporter for 30 minutes and they will use a 30-second soundbite. Or you may answer 5 questions online, like email questions, interview questions, and they'll use 1 sentence. You don't know what it's going to be. But ultimately, when that thing gets published or when that thing goes live or when you see it on television, it holds about 100 times more credibility than if you had paid for that TV spot or you had paid for a print ad, which is, what's considered marketing.
Yeah.
So PR is designed to build a brand. And a doctor can be an individual brand. And, when you are trying to build yourself as, let's say, an expert, you're creating a brand. And so that's what public relations is designed to do. It's not necessarily designed to grow your practice. It may do that. You may get some new patients. Let's say if you have a private practice, you may get some individual patients as a result of somebody, in your area seeing you on a national television show. But that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it to really grow a brand.
So are you one of the conduits or a person who focuses on public relations to get you the most credible segments on a TV show, on a magazine, on a radio talk show? Because those are the ones that really, when people look at you or research you, those segments, those articles are the ones that really add the most to your credibility. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, correct to a certain extent. I am the conduit. Publicists are the conduit between their clients, and in this case, let's just say they're doctors, and the media.
Okay.
And so what our job is just to, through the types of media, through the types of stories that we get, that we initiate, it's our job to what those things do cumulatively is position that doctor as a leading expert in that particular field. So whether that's like dentistry or that's dermatology, and that's where I would say that when I work with individual physicians and I position them to be key opinion leaders, that means I position them to be go-to sources, go-to experts. And so when, let's say, people are looking up like the best dentist, or they're looking up like, leading dermatologist. What happens when you do media and it populates online is that those are the things that organically SEO you. And so when somebody else is saying Dr. Raj he's the guy we're going to, we're ABC News and we're talking to Dr. Raj. When viewers are watching that holds more credibility than when Dr. Raj has an ad that says, I'm Dr. Raj. And this is what I do. Face,
of course.
and this is what I do.
I love that.
It just holds more credibility. If somebody else is talking about you and somebody else is indirectly saying, this is the guy we go to, he's our go-to guy for this topic. And then the public who's watching or reading that begins to see you that way, not after one time, not after one article or one story, but over time.
Yeah. So let me compare that to the other word, and you used it briefly, marketing. So here's PR on my left hand, marketing's on my right hand. What's the difference, Candace? Explain.
I think it's really important to realize that PR is a tool of marketing. So if you look at it as an umbrella, marketing is our big umbrella.
Okay.
that does so many things. You do advertising, you build brochures or material for your practice. You do newsletters. You will do, reputation management. You will do PR that falls under marketing. It's one of the tools of marketing. Now, my career has been isolating PR on its own, but ultimately the reason why I restructured and I rebranded Spotlight to be what it is as a full service agency is because as time has gone on over the last, probably about 7-8 years ago, these things can't really work in silos anymore. There was a time when PR could stand on its own and people were kind of doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But from my experience, in order for an agency to really catapult a client, so you're not just on a hamster wheel, you really have to have these things working. You have to have marketing working in conjunction with PR, in conjunction with social media. You've got to kind of have all these cylinders. And if your goal is really to move forward, then you're not going to just build a website and do some social media. You want to build that brand. But then when you build the brand, when you do PR, who's going to leverage it? Who's going to know about it? Well, that marketing person will take your media hit and blast it out to your patient base on a newsletter. They will share it on your social media. They will put it up on the website. So marketing is where things are more controlled. You choose the words you're going to write. You have control over the imaging that's used. You can develop a brand through marketing, a certain look, a certain feel, a voice, a tone. That is where that's marketing's role.
So let me ask you this. So let me break it down for everyone else. So if I'm doing marketing, is that something where I'm paying to get that ad? I'm paying to get that picture out there. I'm paying to be on a website because number one, I'm paying, but number two, that's how I can shape it and present it the way I want to present it. Is that versus PR, which is it's free, meaning that no one's really paying me when I do some of these things.
You're not paying the writer or the editor. So in marketing, let's say for advertising, the difference between advertising and PR, I think that's a easier way to break this down.
Okay.
If I'm advertising in a magazine and let's say Allure, I am paying Allure for a half a page ad. Okay. I know exactly how much space I have. I create the ad. I pick the colors, the font, the wording.
Gotcha.
They will not change anything. They will take what I give them and print it in the magazine.
Yep.
If I'm pitching Allure, I don't pay them. I just talk to a writer and editor writes whatever they want after they interview my client based on what the client said. They will interview the client. They will write whatever they want. They will use however much they want. I don't see it before it gets printed. And the only time I see it is once it's published.
So watch your language. You never know.
Learn how to speak in sound bites, answer questions thoroughly. I've got all those insider tips.
So let me ask you this, because you're already kind of mentioning things. So, times have changed. It's amazing. I mean, how old I'm getting. Don't want to give my age out, but, social media is huge now. Maybe not so much when, when I first started or I first heard about these things.
Right.
Is social media part of that equation? You mentioned it in your previous answer. Is it part of the marketing and part of the PR social media?
I would look at it as another tool, and it's kind of evolved into something really interesting. I kind of see it as this hybrid between PR and marketing, because if it's done right, it can hold the same credibility as PR. Remember, we talked about how
that's the gold standard, right? That's what you want, is the PR, because
the PR holds the most credibility.
Okay.
PR holds the most credibility because that's somebody else saying you're amazing.
Yeah.
Social media. If it's done correctly, meaning if you don't use your social media platform to be a billboard, then and you're viewed as a place that people will land to get some insight and to get some of your expertise.
Interesting. Okay.
Then it can be a little bit of both PR and marketing. So it can hold the credibility like PR does.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're trusting you. They're starting to trust what you say. You build the trust there over time. But it's controlled the way marketing is because you're the one that controls the page. So you're posting it, you're writing the content, you're, doing the imagery, it's your photos, your, copy, however you want to do it.
Sure.
So it's really this unique hybrid that's evolved, and it really wasn't like this a few years ago even, but as time has gone on, we're finding that the recipe for success really is not to be a big billboard where your social media post is constantly about me. This is what I do. This is what I sell. But it's the most successful. We found it to be the most successful when your audience is really turning to you as an expert. And so they're turning to you you're giving away that free advice that you would with PR, right? You're talking about medicine and your specialty.
I'll tell you what, Candace, I mean, that was a great tip. I'm going to actually write that one down myself after the interview, because very easy to make things a billboard. And I got to say, I'm guilty. Yeah. You know what I mean? Here's Raj and Raj and Raj, but, to put the content you're talking about, me to give out free sleep tips and give free pulmonary tips and board tips. It takes time. It's effort. It's a job.
It's a total job. It's a full-time job. Are you kidding me? It's not even just a job. It's a full-time job.
So I can see why you're saying, I understand now the way you're explaining it, why it's very close to PR, because of the fact that you just can't put random stuff out there for everyone to see that doesn't have credibility to it, because you put yourself under the microscope,
Right.
So that's a really good tip. So
I'm going to cut you off there for a second, just because I want to say that I often say that when, as publicists, when we're pitching media, if it's the first time they're hearing about a doctor or, it's somebody new, they will go to two places. They will go to your website and they'll go to your social media. So they go to your website to find out what you do, like your services, what you do. They go to social media to find out who you are. Wow. So they go to find out how you speak, your voice, your imagery, like how you present yourself. How are you responding to people's comments? Is it lighthearted? Is it serious? Is it scientific? Is it layman? Does it appeal to the layman? So this is why I really feel like the website, and less and less the website is a calling card, and more it's just like the two places that media will go to just really to fill that picture of who a doctor is.
So I got a question. So for my med students, residents, whatever, who are listening to this, who want to get in that world, would I be wrong by saying, Candace, a good first step that you could do is the website and social media? You're in charge of it. You could actually make it. And obviously, it takes time and effort. I'm sure people could help you with it, but it's not cheap. Would that be a first step for anyone who wants to start dabbling in that field, is to get the website and social media as the first step? I would actually recommend their first step being to build a brand foundation. It's actually to really identify who they are, who they want to be. If you're a resident or a med student, like who you want to be as a practicing physician. What's your again, back to what's your objective, right? Yeah.
What's your objective? So here's some questions they can ask themselves. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's my goal, and how do I know when I got there?
Yeah.
What are the things that I need to do, or if I'm in a practice, we need to do every single day to achieve that vision? What are our unwavering principles? So no matter what are the things that we don't compromise, or I don't compromise as a physician?
I like that question. That's a nice one.
It's an important one.
That's a really nice one. Okay.
And then what makes you special? Like, what's your positioning? What makes you special? And then your character, like what's your voice and your personality? And those are in each of these areas, you might want a couple of words, your core and your personality and your voice. It can be like, 15 words. And the reason why this brand foundation, this one sheet of paper, is so important is because everything else that you do, whether that's PR, whether that's social media, whether that's a website, needs to serve this one piece of paper.
Okay. Wow. All right.
So let's say you start doing this, and then you start becoming a busy doctor. You can't do it on your own anymore.
No.
And let's say you just want to hire somebody. What do you do? You give them this one piece of paper and you say, this is who I am. This is my voice. This is my personality. These are the things I'm not ready to compromise on. And then that person should be able to take this piece of paper, your brand foundation, and continue doing your social media so that the voice doesn't change. If you've hired like a 20-year-old to do it, you as like a Harvard educated doctor, don't start sounding like a 20-year-old on your social media, which we have seen happen with our clients.
No, it happens all the time.
And, if you are rooted in science and rooted in medicine and studies, that they are able to find those studies and speak in that voice. If you have if you approach everything with humor, then they can do that too. It's really an art, but it's so important to know who you are as a brand, because even for us, when we're pitching our clients, we've got a client who's very rooted in science and in medicine, and he does research and he's published. And so when we're pitching PR, like our PR ideas and our story ideas very much follow that same voice. This is not something that is or should be cookie cutter for anybody. Websites shouldn't be cookie cutter. They should reflect who you are, right? I just said what you do and who you are for your website and your social. If you haven't answered those core questions, how can you build a website? How can you start social?
And I got to tell you, this is where I think many doctors like myself, I'm the only one here, I'll use me as an example. The hardest part is finding that voice. It's, it's not easy. It's not cheap to take your brand and go with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're too busy yourself, patients, doing whatever other people are doing in their lives. So
it's a lot.
Yeah, I got to tell you.
But it's important. And it's important to be authentic. Like Dr. Raj, you are very authentic. You have a very specific, unique voice in the way you approach things and the way you talk about things or explain medicine, that is very relatable, but very light and not super serious. So you have a very distinguishable tone and voice. And I think that's part of your brand. And that is when, definitely. If you have got a publicist and they're pitching you, it carries through. It needs to carry through. Your social media needs to reflect that. Your website needs to reflect that. And you do it in a number of ways, right? But it's so important. In fact, I would say it's critical before you do anything else to really check in with yourself as a student or a resident, as a doctor, and answer these questions. Look at these core questions and answer them for yourself, because everything else you do, if you don't follow this and you just start randomly doing things, you are going to be fragmented. You're not really going to be building a brand, and you're just going to be doing it for the sake of doing it. And at that point, it's like throwing something on a wall and seeing what sticks. What's the point?
Now, this leads to my next question. So, terminology. There's agents, there's managers out there. And I think that, when I first started, I didn't know there was a difference. You've taught me so much. And I got to say, on a side note, Candace, you really know your stuff. I mean, you break it down super nice. So I'm just going to let you know that you're the woman, dude. But
thank you.
Is there a difference between agent and manager? And you know what I mean? Is it the same?
Yeah, agent, manager, or publicist.
Who are you?
Yes.
Who are you? Are you the PR guru? Are you an agent, a manager? How do you do it?
I'm a publicist. So there's agent, there's manager, there's publicist, and even within those, they have specialties. So you can have an agent, and then you can have a commercial agent. You can have
it's like med school. It's med school, Candace.
I know. So a manager. So a publicist, this one's the easiest one. A publicist is really about the media relations side of it. Okay. So whatever you're doing, it's the publicist's job to help get that word out in media.
Okay.
That's the easiest one.
I like that one. That was easy.
That's easy.
We're already at 100% on that one.
Right. Agent and manager can become a little tricky, but a manager is, I think, also is more about, and this is, I think, a little bit more entertainment related. There are a few doctors that do have agents and managers, or different types of agents and managers, but they are really going to be more of those celebrity doctors who, are or were on like Extreme Makeover and Dr. 90210. And they're they'll likely have agents that have helped them strike a deal or have gotten them into in with like certain producers or directors to be part of shows. So like maybe they're even consulting on like Grey's Anatomy or those types of medical based shows, right? And there have been so many of them. A manager, I think, is a little bit more entertainment based. I actually think some chefs have had managers as well. And that's really like guiding career. So like, let's look at, let's look at it as like career types of choices, but a manager will negotiate for like a celebrity. A manager will find them a job and that, like on a series, let's say, and then negotiate, how many episodes and what their fees are and all that. Agents, and I've worked with a few commercial agents myself because of some of our clients, and they're great. Their job is really to kind of pair you as a doctor, let's say, with a brand. So, you're a dentist and you're going to you've gotten a contract with Oral-B through your commercial agent to do a number of things. And that could be, to help promote some new product on social media, to go to New York and do a media tour, a meeting with editors and writers and doing TV shows for, a day or two, to lend credibility to a certain product. Right. And you do that as a physician when you've built to the status of a key opinion leader, when you are a known go-to source.
A KOL.
A KOL. I know, my favorite
I've seen your videos. You love the KOL. That's what
I do. I feel like, because I think when you hit that level, you can be a medical expert. But when you hit that level of becoming a key opinion leader, that's when, companies, and whether that's when pharma starts coming to you and saying, hey, we just got FDA approval for this new treatment, and we want you to be the voice talking to media, telling them about it. And when, or like, again, you get a commercial agent and you've hit that status of being a key opinion leader so that big brands want you to be the one that talks about their brands to media. When you've hit that KOL point in your career, like that's the gold standard to me. It's not just like, it's great to be a medical expert and be on TV, but that's also another way that media can really help, and has helped doctors do more for their career than just be interviewed and just build a brand, right? Now they're able to get paid for it. Now they're able to make, some extra money.
So that's when the money starts coming in.
It can, If you've done PR, if you've done enough PR long enough, and I really pride ourselves for having represented some of our clients for, as long as even, 10, 11 years, even if it's like 3 years or longer, that long-term relationship, that ability to keep going and keeping your name top of mind. So when people are thinking about certain industries, you're the name that pops up, or they're searching, you're the name that pops up. When you hit that level, you are able to do more. A lot of doctors will leverage the PR that they've gotten, the fact that they've become the go-to source, to potentially transition out of insurance-based practice to being a part concierge practice, to being able to charge an admin fee, to being able to, potentially get approached by companies to get paid to speak at podium, at conferences, to media on behalf of a brand or a product or a treatment. So there's more that can be done in the bigger picture as you move forward and push forward with PR as a doctor.
So this is great. So let me just do a couple plugs. So Candace, me and you are always on the same track. I don't know if you know this, because just maybe a few days ago, I did a podcast about concierge medicine with the coolest doctors in the whole world, Dr. James Pickney. So check out the podcast. And that's interesting. It all relates together now. So I want to make sure I get to answer these questions. So a bunch of my students, my residents, people who want to do media, wanted me to ask you a few things. Number one, so they're so broad. And I think that's the main problem with me and people who want to get into media. We don't know what's the right question to ask. We don't know just yet what the brand is, but they want to know if they want to connect with media, what is the first thing to do? How do they get connected with media? What would you say would be the first starting point?
Well, it depends on what your area of medicine is. So if you're like a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon, the type of media is going to be more beauty based. But if you're a neurologist, if you're more science based, internal medicine, spine surgeon, cardiologist, cardiothoracic surgeon, let's say you're more medical health and medical type of writers and editors. So there's a number of different things you can do. One is look at the articles that you're reading and where you see other doctors quoted. Who wrote those articles? Find them online. So you can search them. You can follow them on Twitter. You can follow them on Instagram. Begin to know who these writers are that write the type of stories that you would foresee yourself in. That, you're starting to track who these people are, who these writers are. And then obviously you can also look at any magazine has what's called a masthead. So if you open up a magazine, those first few pages, there will be a list of all the editors. So starting at like that, editor in chief, and it goes down to editorial director. It'll say beauty. Here's our beauty director. Here's our health editor. Here's our, beauty assistant, so you can see that. And then you can find names that way as well. The byline articles and those writers are really a great way to start and really becoming familiar with the types of articles that they write. Hey, here's somebody who writes a lot about COVID. I really feel like I could be a great source for them. So you reach out, and you say, hey, I've noticed a few of your articles and I like how you're informing readers about COVID. I'm Dr. Raj. This is what I specialize in. And I feel like I can add a lot of insight for your readers. This is what I bring to the table that's unique and different. And that's one of the other things about PR. Is it right for everybody? No, it's not. It's not right for everybody. And you always want to ask yourself, what do I have to offer that's unique and different from the next guy? Because you're not the only pulmonary specialist. You're not the only neurologist. You're not the only cardiothoracic. What is it about you? Why you? Why should writers and editors, ask that objective question? Why should writers and editors talk to you over the next guy or woman?
I like that. Well, and here's the other question they're going to ask is, and you don't have to give all your secrets away. I know this is great. Any social media tips or techniques for medical students and doctors who want to get into that? Is there anything you kind of give advice on,
Really, it's really interesting that you say that about medical students, because I am starting to notice that I think as our younger generation kind of starts entering in and they're more savvy about social media, even though I understand they don't really teach these things in medical school, or how to run a practice.
Is that like anatomy? I'm going to Instagram 101.
Right. Although I think it would be really helpful, like the business side of it. But that aside, this new generation of physicians that's going to be coming is naturally inclined to social media because it's just part of their life as an individual. And so if they want to start now, and I'm noticing a few, I think I talked to a dental student who has actually started to build a following, chronicling her journey through dental school, which was really interesting to hear. The way to do it is to always be mindful. Again, back to the brand. You should still start with that brand foundation, and that may change, and you may want to revisit that every 1 to 3 years, depending on where you're at and how your careers evolve. But if you are going to be doing that as a resident or as a medical student, and you really want to get into your social media, then really ask yourself what the voice is. Who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be perceived? And that's how you build on your social there. And so much of social media is really not about what you post. It's about how you show up. Social media, we always describe it as like a party. It's like this big event. Getting all dressed up to the nines and showing up is your social post. Okay. And like you bring a nice little gift and that's your social post.
Okay.
But if you don't talk to anybody at the party and you leave, what was the point of having been there? So
none whatsoever.
So much of social media is engagement, is not just talking to the people who comment, but going to other places where the type of people you want on your page are, and talking to them and being like authentic and insightful and engaging is that's what it's about.
Nice analogy, by the way. I love the analogy there.
Thank you. It's a big one. It really is a big one because it's about being, it is about being, pun intended, social, and talking to people there, talking to people that are on and around, where you want to be. You go to where they are.
I want to make sure, because I already made this about the medical students and the residents and the interns, and I love all you folks. But you know what? I do have a small demographic of people who are undecided. So I want to give, my college students who do listen a little bit, who haven't decided yet. So if they wanted to go into PR, they haven't decided yet. They listen to this podcast, are like, dude, Candace is the bomb. I want to be like her. So any tips for students in high school or college who may want to go into PR? Just a generalized answer for you now.
Oh, I love this question. So one of my clients does the LEAP Foundation every year. It's a nonprofit organization for high school and college kids. And I participate every year as a mentor. And they do what's called, it's almost like speed dating, but they have a bunch of professionals at tables. And then these students come to the table and they start asking you fire rapid questions about what you do and how you got into what you're doing and advice and all that. So this is exactly like that. And they're all high school and college kids.
Okay.
And so what I love to tell these students is whether it's PR or you're just not sure what you want to do, it all comes back to that internship. Think about what you think seems fun and sounds fun. And then, or like somebody, and you're like, I really think I could do that, or that seems really fun. You can do a couple of things. One, you can do an internship, or two, you can do what's called an informational interview. Reach out to that person and ask for 15 to 30 minutes of their time, either buy a coffee or, now with Zoom, people are more willing to give a little bit more of their time. And a lot of people like to talk about themselves, so they don't mind that question.
That's me and you.
And ask them, how did they get into what they're doing? What does an average day look like for them? And that gives you some insight into what that role looks like.
Yeah.
Being in an internship, there's really nothing quite